Well, hello and welcome to something a few years ago I'm not even sure I would have been ready to celebrate. And that's 250 episodes of my little podcast, the Flourishing Introverts Talk. No, it's even the Flourishing Introvert Talks. You'd think I'd know it by now, wouldn't you? And as I say, I couldn't imagine probably when I started reaching this kind of milestone, because I launched in February 2020, actually 16th of February 2020. And depending on where you were in the world, I know what happened here just after that. And it was the first lockdown. The first of many lockdowns. We were a bit like playing lockdown kind of yo-yos, really, in out, shake it all about. So a bit of a hokey cokey or hokey pokey, I think they call it in the US. So it was one of those things that I didn't quite know how it was going to take off. But actually, people being in lockdown meant that not only were there a lot of podcasts starting around that time, so competition was quite fierce, but actually people wanted something to listen to. And I was always clear at the outset that my podcast was really aimed to be of a support to introverts everywhere, whether they were self-employed, employed in the UK, anywhere around the world, whatever age range really, but those people who needed support, who knew that there was nothing wrong with them, who knew that they didn't need fixing, but somehow they were coming up against barriers and obstacles a lot of the time. So they were my primary audience really for this podcast. And at the same time, I knew that I also wanted to provide information and material that anybody who was an ally of we introverts, and we have many allies. Let's not think that everyone out there is our enemy, because they're certainly not. So anyone who was an ally, anyone who was a friend of introverts, anyone who was a family member who knew that they had introverts as part of their family, anyone who was a work colleague, whether it be a peer or a boss, whatever it happened to be, my podcast is also for those people. And frankly, I wish that my bosses, when I was in employment, had a better idea of how to manage me, because I think they would have got more from me. Because quite often what we find is that introverts have so much more potential than they get the opportunity to release, really, I suppose. So that's kind of who my podcast was for. And it's been an interesting journey, because I didn't like the sound of my own voice. How many out there listening are going, yeah, you don't like the sound of my voice. You're not allowed to say that, but you don't like the sound of your own voice. And I know I'm not alone with that. And of course, when you're creating a podcast, you have to do a certain amount of checking. And even if it's minor editing before the professionals take over, you have to listen to your own recording, to your own voice. And I found that a challenge at the outset. I'm over that now. Do I love the sound of my own voice? No, but it is what it is. And I think there's so much growth and development that comes from being able to accept that I am who I am. My voice is what it is. I don't need to try and put on airs and graces or speak in kind of received pronunciation, whatever it is. I don't need to speak like the Queen or like somebody from, or the King even now, or somebody from a public education background. I can just be me. So that was a little hurdle I had to get over to begin with. And it seems that I've overcome some of those hurdles rather well, because my podcast, the Flourishing Introvert Talks, is often and fairly consistently in the top 3 podcasts at Good Pods, as rated by Good Pods, in the whole kind of diversity, equity, inclusion category. And that's something to be really proud of, I think. Being the top 3 in any category is an accolade, quite frankly. And so being recognised as a top 3 pod in that particular category is something I'm really proud of. And there are other things for me to celebrate, as you may or may not be aware. This is going live on one of the many channels that are part of the House of Flourishing Introverts on my YouTube channel. It may also be on LinkedIn, it may be on Insta, it may be all sorts of places under that banner of the House of Flourishing Introverts. But I have over 1,000 subscribers now to my newsletter on LinkedIn, the Flourishing Nudge. And okay, those figures aren't massive by some people's standards, but I'm really proud because that's all organic growth. And I have over 100 subscribers on this YouTube channel. And again, I'm proud of that because it's all organic growth. I know I'm not going to break any land speed record, and I'm not going to break the internet, which is what some people really seem to want to do. But let me say again, all organic growth. And that's something I'm incredibly proud of. So what's underneath all of this that I do? Why do I do it? Why have I been consistently at this podcast since February 2020? And I'm proud to say I've only taken ever 2 weeks off where I had a little break in all of those 250 episodes. So consistency is something that's really important to me. Well, what I realized is that wherever I worked in the world, and I have worked around the world as a trainer, coach, facilitator, working with corporate clients. In fact, I've worked with corporate clients my whole career, either within a corporate or working alongside them as a trusted partner. And wherever I worked in the world, I noticed one thing. And it's easy to say that we notice what we look for. I know that. But I noticed one thing, and that was that the bias towards the extrovert ideal that exists in corporate worlds, be it corporate America, corporate Britain, corporate Europe, corporate, wherever it happens to be, I noticed the same thing, that the quiet ones were the ones who got on, did their work without making much of a fuss. They were the people who were resilient, the people who would be resourceful. If you can hear rustling, it's because my cat Max has decided to clamber over what is next to me. So we'll let that rustling finish for a moment. But what I noticed is that I'm sorry, I have to pause for a moment because he's currently got his head in a bag that has tissue paper in it. So I'm not sure how I'm going to stop him other than taking the tissue paper off his head. Okay, let's take a pause. It seems like we've got some comments. So let's take a pause while Max continues to do his fussing. No, don't jump up here, Max. Any comments that we can see? Be great if we can. Okay, he's quietened down, so let me continue. Wherever I happen to work, I would notice the same thing, is that we would always see them. Not seeing any comments, so my team is supporting me behind the scenes here, but I'm not seeing any comments, nothing on my screen that I can see, so sorry if I can't respond to them. Anyway, wherever I was working in the world, I would notice the same thing, that there was this bias towards the extrovert ideal that introverted people, whatever position in the kind of hierarchy of an organization, had to face. And I decided in that moment that actually that was unacceptable. So I knew I had to do something about it. So my big idea, of course, was to empower those who are subjected to the bias by enabling them to be the best version of themselves, by helping them to be assertive, by helping them to challenge the bias, by helping them to stand up for themselves. And that was, and still is, something that's really important to me. But what was also important was recognizing that what I needed to do, you're going to jump down now, Max. That's a really good idea, mate. That's a really good idea. What I also recognized was that what I needed to do was to provide the information, some strategies, some tools, whatever they happen to be, in ways that introverts were comfortable with. So the way I decided to go about that, with the help of the fabulous team who are helping me in the background here, was to be active on so many different channels. So the Flourishing Introvert Talks, which is what we're here to celebrate today, has obviously been going as a weekly podcast since February 2020. And episodes are usually kind of 10 to 20 minutes long. So they're nice little bite size. I occasionally have guests. I've had some guests in the early days. We may well bring some of those guests back later on. But there is always something in there that people can take away, because I'm a pragmatist at heart. So I need to give people things that they can go away and apply. I've mentioned my Flourishing Nudge, the 2 weekly LinkedIn newsletter, and the thing that's got over 1,000 subscribers now, which I'm delighted about. Monthly, I do a live show, and it happens to be tonight. So this is a warm up for my live show tonight. And the live show is called Dropping Pebbles in the Pond, because my intention with that is always to drop a pebble. That's the other cat who's just jumped down from the windowsill and is probably going to find the same paper bag with the same tissue paper in it, but we'll see. Yes, that's exactly what's going to happen. So the Dropping Pebbles in the Pond, which is live tonight, and I've got a fabulous guest tonight, I have to say, is where I literally drop a pebble so that the ripples reach out far and wide, and they're ripples of positivity that enable and empower introverts. Sorry, I can't be serious, can I, with all this going on? Yep, same bag, same same tissue paper. But that's not all. I also have a weekly reflections email. Reflections email, and within that there are again always pragmatic tips that people can take away, and you get a little look into behind the scenes of what goes on here at Flourishing Introverts, in the house of Flourishing Introverts. Not many cat noises though in this case. And there are courses that I offer, both self-paced and facilitated by me. So there are so many ways that I'm here to support and help and enable and empower you. So that's given a little kind of glimpse into a little bit about why I started the podcast, the main aim of the podcast, and why I'll keep going. You know, people might think, hey, haven't I run out of things to talk about yet? Well, no. And of course, our environment is changing. Our challenges change to some degree. The bias, sadly, isn't changing as fast as I'd like it to. But some of the things we face are changing. So I may revisit topics, but with a different perspective, through a different lens. And that's entirely appropriate. But what I also want to do, can I see comments now? No, I can't. What I also want to do is just finish, I suppose, by sharing a few little snippets from a favorite author of mine. And the author is Donna Ashworth. And the first one I'm sharing is from her book, Wild Hope. And I have wild hope in my heart, so this feels quite appropriate. And this is very short. Another one I'm going to share is slightly longer. And what this one says is, your battle to fit in was brave, but I hope you see that accepting you were never supposed to is much braver. How beautiful is that? So I want you to really just dwell on that, because I spent many years trying to fit in, bending myself out of shape in order to fit in. And what I now know is that I was never supposed to. And I want you to know that you were never supposed to fit in. Oh dear, this has got to go down as one of the most distracted sessions there ever has been, right? But let me finish with the last one from Donna Ashworth, and this is from her latest book, Growing Brave. And the reason this is so important to me, and even the title is important to me, is because every now and again I run a kind of short journey with introverts called Becoming Braver. So the fact that this is from her latest book, Growing Brave, seems appropriate. And this is called Ode to the Sensitive, because I think many of we introverts are sensitive. When we fly, we soar, but when we fall, there is no floor. When we laugh, we cry. When we believe, there is no why. When we love, we love. We love like angels from above. When we rage, we seethe. We feel so much, it's hard to breathe. When we care, we roar like a thunder from our core. When we know, we know. We channel light from all that grows. When we try, we strive. The only limit is the sky. When we fly, we soar, but when we fall, there is no floor. Thank you for being with me to celebrate this. I invited you to bring a tipple. All I could manage was a blackcurrant juice. I hope you have something stronger, either now or a bit later. But yeah, comments not showing. I'll have to go back and comment to them, respond to them afterwards. But thank you. Thank you for being with me on however much of this journey you've been with me. It might be that you're somebody who's only just found me. Thank you. It might be that you're somebody who's been with me from the start. Thank you. However long you've been here, A, you're really welcome, and B, thank you so much. I applaud you. Thanks.